The future, it doesn't just arrive. It's born inside each of us, waiting to be ignited. At Kagiso Trust, we believe the future lives in you. We've walked beside the dreamers, the doers, the job seekers, and the leaders, igniting the spark of potential that lies deep inside. When we unlock that potential, we don't just build careers or businesses, we build a future shaped by your hands, your dreams, your courage. It's all inside of you. This is more than just a chance. It's a movement, a promise that with the right support, dreams turn into reality, hope turns into achievement, and potential turns into legacy. Kagiso Trust is here to walk with you every step of the way, because the future isn't just ahead of us, it is inside of us all. Kagiso Trust, igniting human capacity. The future, it doesn't just arrive, it's born inside each of us, waiting to be ignited. At Kagiso Trust, we believe the future lives in you. We've walked beside the dreamers, the doers, the job seekers, and the leaders, igniting the spark of potential that lies deep inside. When we unlock that potential, we don't just build careers or businesses, we build a future shaped by your hands, your dreams, your courage. It's all inside of you. This is more than just a chance, it's a movement, a promise that with the right support, dreams turn into reality, hope turns into achievement, and potential turns into legacy. Kagiso Trust is here to walk with you every step of the way, because the future isn't just ahead of us, it is inside of us all. Kagiso Trust, igniting human capacity. The future, it doesn't just arrive, it's born inside each of us, waiting to be ignited. At Kagiso Trust, we believe the future lives in you. We've walked beside the dreamers, the doers, the job seekers, and the leaders, igniting the spark of potential that lies deep inside. When we unlock that potential, we don't just build careers or businesses, we build a future shaped by your hands, your dreams, your courage. It's all inside of you. This is more than just a chance, it's a movement, a promise that with the right support, dreams turn into reality, hope turns into achievement, and potential turns into legacy. Kagiso Trust is here to walk with you every step of the way, because the future isn't just ahead of us, it is inside of us all. Kagiso Trust, igniting human capacity. The future, it doesn't just arrive, it's born inside each of us, waiting to be ignited. At Kagiso Trust, we believe the future lives in you. We've walked beside the dreamers, the doers, the job seekers, and the leaders, igniting the spark of potential that lies deep inside. When we unlock that potential, we don't just build careers or businesses, we build a future shaped by your hands, your dreams, your courage. It's all inside of you. This is more than just a chance, it's a movement, a promise that with the right support, dreams turn into reality, hope turns into achievement, and potential turns into legacy. Kagiso Trust is here to walk with you every step of the way, because the future isn't just ahead of us, it is inside of us all. Kagiso Trust, igniting human capacity. The future, it doesn't just arrive, it's born inside each of us, waiting to be ignited. At Kagiso Trust, we believe the future lives in you. We've walked beside the dreamers, the doers, the job seekers, and the leaders, igniting the spark of potential that lies deep inside. When we unlock that potential, we don't just build careers or businesses, we build a future shaped by your hands, your dreams, your courage. It's all inside of you. This is more than just a chance. It's a movement, a promise that with the right support, dreams turn into reality, hope turns into achievement, and potential turns into legacy. Kagiso Trust is here to walk with you every step of the way because the future isn't just ahead of us, it is inside of us all. Kagiso Trust, igniting human capacity. The future, it doesn't just arrive, it's born inside each of us, waiting to be ignited. At Kagiso Trust, we believe the future lives in you. We've walked beside the dreamers, the doers, the job seekers, and the leaders, igniting the spark of potential that lies deep inside. When we unlock that potential, we don't just build careers or businesses, we build a future shaped by your hands, your dreams, your courage. It's all inside of you. This is more than just a chance, it's a movement, a promise that with the right support, dreams turn into reality, hope turns into achievement, and potential turns into legacy. Kagiso Trust is here to walk with you every step of the way because the future isn't just ahead of us, it is inside of us all. Kagiso Trust, igniting human capacity. The future, it doesn't just arrive, it's born inside each of us, waiting to be ignited. At Kagiso Trust, we believe the future lives in you. We've walked beside the dreamers, the doers, the job seekers, and the leaders, igniting the spark of potential that lies deep inside. When we unlock that potential, we don't just build careers or businesses, we build a future shaped by your hands, your dreams, your courage. It's all inside of you. This is more than just a chance, it's a movement, a promise that with the right support, dreams turn into reality, hope turns into achievement, and potential turns into legacy. Kagiso Trust is here to walk with you every step of the way because the future isn't just ahead of us, it is inside of us all. Kagiso Trust, igniting human capacity. The future, it doesn't just arrive, it's born inside each of us, waiting to be ignited. At Kagiso Trust, we believe the future lives in you. We've walked beside the dreamers, the doers, the job seekers, and the leaders, igniting the spark of potential that lies deep inside. When we unlock that potential, we don't just build careers or businesses, we build a future shaped by your hands, your dreams, your courage. It's all inside of you. This is more than just a chance, it's a movement, a promise that with the right support, dreams turn into reality, hope turns into achievement, and potential turns into legacy. Kagiso Trust is here to walk with you every step of the way because the future isn't just ahead of us, it is inside of us all. Kagiso Trust, igniting human capacity. The future, it doesn't just arrive, it's born inside each of us, waiting to be ignited. At Kagiso Trust, we believe the future lives in you. We've walked beside the dreamers, the doers, the job seekers, and the leaders, igniting the spark of potential that lies deep inside. When we unlock that potential, we don't just build careers or businesses, we build a future shaped by your hands, your dreams, your courage. It's all inside of you. This is more than just a chance, it's a movement, a promise that with the right support, dreams turn into reality, hope turns into achievement, and potential turns into legacy. Kagiso Trust is here to walk with you every step of the way, because the future isn't just ahead of us, it is inside of us all. Kagiso Trust, igniting human capacity. The future, it doesn't just arrive, it's born inside each of us, waiting to be ignited. At Kagiso Trust, we believe the future lives in you. We've walked beside the dreamers, the doers, the job seekers, and the leaders, igniting the spark of potential that lies deep inside. When we unlock that potential, we don't just build careers or businesses, we build a future shaped by your hands, your dreams, your courage. It's all inside of you. This is more than just a chance, it's a movement, a promise that with the
May I just say that we'll begin in 15 minutes' time? Again, we face the distances of Joburg and Pretoria and the misfortune of a car accident right outside the CSIR. So that's really creating a bit of havoc. So if we can just give people about 10 minutes leeway to get in, and then we'll begin. Thank you.
that potential, we don't just build careers or businesses, we build a future shaped by your hands, your dreams, your courage. It's all inside of you. This is more than just a chance, it's a movement, a promise that with the right support, dreams turn into reality, hope turns into achievement, and potential turns into legacy. Kagiso Trust is here to walk with you every step of the way, because the future isn't just ahead of us, it is inside of us all. Kagiso Trust, igniting human capacity. The future, it doesn't just arrive, it's born inside each of us, waiting to be ignited. At Kagiso Trust, we believe the future lives in you. We've walked beside the dreamers, the doers, the job seekers, and the leaders, igniting the spark of potential that lies deep inside. When we unlock that potential, we don't just build careers or businesses, we build a future shaped by your hands, your dreams, your courage. It's all inside of you. This is more than just a chance, it's a movement, a promise that with the right support, dreams turn into reality, hope turns into achievement, and potential turns into legacy. Kagiso Trust is here to walk with you every step of the way, because the future isn't just ahead of us, it is inside of us all. Kagiso Trust, igniting human capacity. The future, it doesn't just arrive, it's born inside each of us, waiting to be ignited. At Kagiso Trust, we believe the future lives in you. We've walked beside the dreamers, the doers, the job seekers, and the leaders, igniting the spark of potential that lies deep inside. When we unlock that potential, we don't just build careers or businesses, we build a future shaped by your hands, your dreams, your courage. It's all inside of you. This is more than just a chance, it's a movement, a promise that with the right support, dreams turn into reality, hope turns into achievement, and potential turns into legacy. Kagiso Trust is here to walk with you every step of the way because the future isn't just ahead of us, it is inside of us all. Kagiso Trust, igniting.
Suka. Mm, mm, mm,
Mhm. Mhm.
Right. What about what conversation? What about
Accept Gaspar.
health insurance? What did you have to pay? Received? Did you feel you were heard? The other question that arises was, country from your citizen. And how much that you actually incorporate is also another issue because that may reappear in the form of legal challenges a little bit later on if you haven't taken things into account. Let's listen to one of your voice notes on this. Hey, Jerry Joseph, this is how they reach
All right, thank you so much for your patience. I think we're on 9:30 on the dot, so we can begin with day 2 of the CADE and Kagiso Trust Summit on dynamic and collective enterprises. Yesterday, there was just an underlying joke. Is it CADE? CADE? I say CADE. Whatever it is, we have to build dynamic enterprises that are future fit. I think that was the conclusion from yesterday. Our theme for this year, as you well know, is reimagining collective enterprises as scalable engines principal and primary job creators in any economy you want in the world. 70% of people employed worldwide are employed in some SME. Now, when we've got the unemployment crisis in South Africa being what it is, and the disaffection that we see, particularly amongst the youth who are just looking for entry into the mainstream economy, to be absorbed by the economy, to learn new skills, to lend their talent, and the economy just cannot take them in. So we're looking now to SMEs to see if perhaps they could be the catalyzers of those opportunities. But in order for that to happen, small and medium enterprises need to do a few things, and that's what we concluded yesterday. They need to be dynamic. They can't play small. They have to start punching above their weight. They have to start leveling up, and they have to start thinking about a future unknown. There are a few things we do understand about the future that is emergent. It is data-driven, energy intensive, and it requires a lot of creativity. So that's where part of the dynamism comes in. But also, we know that for businesses to level up, they have to be incorporated into value chains. They have to be market makers. And we do need something around the macro structure of the South African economy to change. We spoke about the fact that the South African economy, since the 60s and 70s, has been categorized simple categorizations of mining, manufacturing, agriculture, retail, and services. Those are the sort of the broad brushstrokes. But what's happening in the nuances? What's happening in the e-commerce space, the creative economy space, agro-tech space, and the burgeoning green economy space? How does that expand South Africa Inc.? And where can small enterprises fit into the supplier value chains of the South African economy? And once they're able to be adapted into the expansion of the South African economy, could we even think about taking them into the regional SADC economy? Could we even go beyond the SADC economy into the Pan-African economy? And beyond that, into global value chains. We brought examples yesterday, very simply. I spoke to the cosmetics company in France, L'Oréal. It started off as a small family-owned enterprise. It's now one of the largest listed entities on the French stock exchange, and it's a global giant, raking in more than €1 trillion. So how do we stimulate an SME from that baseline small to medium and then to giant? And a lot was said yesterday about the missing middle. And I quipped, but not in jest, in honesty. I've only ever heard the term missing middle being referred to in terms of middle-class parents who are struggling to pay exorbitant university fees. But we found out yesterday that the same concept exists within the ESD space, because you've got these businesses that are now too big to be considered grant recipients, but too small to really get these huge syndicated commercial loans. So what happens to them in that middle ground? Because it's in that middle ground where they are ready to grow, expand, rise up, but there's not enough support for them, not financially and not in terms of technical support. So a lot of those issues were brought in yesterday. even in terms of technical support, we understood that when a business is ready to catapult, a lot needs to happen by way of compliance, due diligence, studying the financials, and seeing whether that expansion is project ready. And commercials will never enter that preparatory phase. Perhaps DFIs if it's a big infrastructure project, but somebody needs to come in that ABCD phase before it becomes an XYZ phase. XYZ is where the production, the full manufacturing, entering the market comes into play. That's where the money is at. But you need to walk a journey to get there. And that's the technical support, expertise, licensing, all of that stuff that's needed. And that costs money. Those are fees for experts, for advisors, and they need that support. Working through the tax system, different jurisdictions if they're looking to expand or franchise into new markets. So that's also the kind of support that's needed. So today, as we reimagine that collective enterprise future being scalable, inclusive, leading to regional economic development, and of course, dignified growth, can we talk about creating an ecosystem of support, of expansion, of business modeling, of financial modeling, perhaps of aggregating resources. We spoke about collective enterprises yesterday, and then mindset also came in yesterday. Is a very provocative statement was made by our very first speaker yesterday, Miriam Altman, who said something that stuck with me and said, you know, there's something about the South African makeup, maybe because there are so many different agencies, DFIs, and lenders, state-sponsored as well, that makes an entrepreneur more reliant on the state and less reliant on their own intuition. Whereas if you go into other countries where the state doesn't step in like that, entrepreneurs are aggressive, they are hungry, they'll do whatever it takes to get their share of the pie. And so you see them thrive and build multi-million-dollar enterprises because they know there's no government to fall back on. So there's something to be said about the state stepping in to fill the gaps, but in itself, it's a limitation as well. So perhaps those are some of the issues we can tease out. Our very first panel discussion today is markets, trade, and value chains. Before I introduce the panelists, let me also say thank you to those who logged in online yesterday. We know that there were quite a lot of you who joined us virtually, and we appreciate you, and we appreciate that you're joining us again today, whether as speaker, delegate, participant. We see you. And also, just by way of an update, we were expecting a keynote address from a renowned businessman and corporate leader, Professor Bonang Mohale, yesterday. But due to a few schedule changes, he has committed to being here today at noon. So we will adapt the program a little bit for that keynote address when we hear from a doyen of business. But for now, let's hear about experts in the field of markets, trade, and incorporating and expanding value chains. The panelists who will be joining me on stage now are Ms. Lesego Mashego, who is the head of SA Financial Inclusion at the Finmark Trust. She'll be joined by Tabile Nkunjani, the senior trade economist at the National Agricultural Marketing Council, NAMC. And we're also joined by Mr. JP Leroux, the CEO of FarmPex. Please warmly welcome them, and let's talk about markets, trade, and value chains. Go ahead. Any seat, feel free. Yes, sir. Just not here. So I must have a really kind of an A-type personality. I would have hoped you sit in the middle. Then we have man, female, man, female, man. But that's okay. You break that. You break that OC. Okay, I love that. You break that OCD thing in me. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's a weird behavior. It's like even when I hang up clothes on the wash line, I have to match the pegs. Like an outfit can't have yellow pig and blue pig. It's blue pigs, yellow. Apparently, I see a therapist about that. I will. Okay, but what we don't need to see a therapist about is the issues of markets, trade, and value chain. So thank you, JP Leroux, for your time. Thank you, Mr. Tabile Nkunjani, for your time. Thank you, Ms. Lesego Mashego, for your time. Perhaps just by way of understanding your thinking, a 1-minute summation. When I say markets, trade, and value chains, what does that mean to you in the context of what we're talking about, JP?
So in our sector, okay, this is working. Can you guys hear me? Sorry. In our sector, we predominantly in the agricultural sector. So that sector is very dynamic and is very data driven. And the issue with getting small scale or SMMEs to understand their place in that sector, they don't have data. And if you don't have data, you cannot make decisions. So for us, that's one of the biggest areas.
All right, so information analytics, knowing your problem so that you solve for it, knowing your opportunities. Okay, Tabile, when I say markets, trade, and value chains, what does that mean to you in the context of what we're talking about with opportunities or challenges?
Okay, thanks, Chair. I think the first speaker has just covered this, but I'm going to have to say something. But I think what is important, other than anything, it is to understand what, if you are an enterprise, want to get into a market, what kind of market that you want to get into. But then that goes back to what was said in terms of how saturated the market is. And if is saturated, can you make some kind of adjustment to the product that they're offering, the innovation that's where it comes in? Then just twinkle a little bit of that, and then of course you can be able to access the market. But generally, the data is one thing that you need. And unfortunately for small players, that's something that is not easily accessible to it. In fact, we are seeing a trend of data being too commercialized, right? So meaning, well, you don't have money, you cannot really be able to understand what's going on, right? So that's an issue that is coming up a little bit. It's even worse when you're getting to Africa. Many countries do not have access to data. It's very few, the likes of Tanzania, Rwanda, and the rest, even if you need like a very simple trade data, you cannot really rely on the numbers that they are giving you. So those are some of the things.
Shot in the dark. You're just making decisions intuitively. Lesego.
So, morning, everyone. For me, it's thinking about a South African enterprise, and it's thinking about how are they going to access these markets. And I'm going to mention, so we have a program that we're implementing, and it focuses on micro enterprises that are informal, which are the majority of the enterprises that we actually find in South Africa. I think a lot of times we talk about the small, the medium, but we forget that that small at some point was micro. And that small at some point operated in a community. But again, it goes back to what my colleagues have said. In that community, do they even know what markets exist in the community? So in this program that we have these young people that all want to be hairdressers. There's no way that you're going to be all hairdressers and make a living from that, because at some point there'll be market saturation, and at some point you're not going to be able to make money from that business that you've started. So for me, it's thinking about it holistically and thinking about, from a municipal perspective, from a government perspective, what if our information are we providing to these enterprises when they do come to you and say, I want to register? Right? When I say I want to be a hairdresser and I live in Tembisa, is it a viable market for you to actually be a hairdresser? Have you added something, some value add that others don't have, that then create an opportunity for you? Because if you haven't, then you're not going to access those markets. And that for me is what comes to mind.
You know, I come from the media and it's a cutthroat industry. And one of the things they'll say in the media is the people who really make it have an X factor. Because enough people can talk on television or radio, but there's got to be a distinguishing variable. It could be your voice, like a Wilson Bingosi voice, or it could be your specialization, business journalism, or it could be you are gutsy, you're a war correspondent, but you've got to have something that separates you from the rest. And so when people enter a market where everybody's offering the same product, the same skill set, what makes you different to stand out? And if you don't have that, you need to think about something else. So that's what we're talking about. That's at the micro level. What about at the SME level? Because now you've broken through that barrier, Lesego, and now you've got something that people want, but now you need to scale. You need to be more than one retailer, one big supermarket in the community. You want to be more than that.
So at an SME level, for me, it's thinking about it holistically from an ecosystem perspective. I don't think the manner in which we look at access to markets on its own is sufficient, because you need a combination of things in order for you to be able to access markets. You need to be able to access funding. You need to be able to access technology that you require. You need to be able to access the markets that you want to operate in, but you also need to be able to access supply chain, but that is supported by an enabling policy environment that actually enables you to do this. And you also need to be able to access the mentoring, the incubation that is required in order for you to be able to scale your business.
JP, something was said yesterday, which is one of the distinguishing variables of a dynamic enterprise is one, being able to read the market, respond, but make a market.
Correct. So often when we look at, and we're talking about the SMME sector, you know, often when we look at that, what we do from a development perspective is, firstly, we make the biggest mistake. We call these things projects. Okay? It's not a project. It's a business. So we're coming back to that whole mindset change that came out yesterday, and I got very excited when I heard that. Because for us, from a development perspective, is, remember, you a micro, you're down here. Now you have to change your mindset to move to the next level. And in that change, we start understanding all these factors that you were talking about, right? And often these factors is like a gatekeeper. You can't get through it. Now, if you can't get through it, what do? We give up. No, we don't give up. We redefine. So this is why it's dynamic. We redefine how we're going to enter the market. So I'm going to use one of our colleagues over here in the Tugela Ferry area. So what we are doing there is looking at a market scaling. They're not micro anymore. They're now SMMEs. We have to scale. And to scale them, we are optimizing the resources that they have to move further, looking at where else can you play with what you have.
Just to that point, and maybe I'm moving a little bit too fast, you've often seen SMEs do really well, be dynamic, they adopt the technology, they do this, and they scale, but then suddenly it all goes wrong because apparently you're scaling too fast. Well, what happens then?
No, it's not about scaling too fast. Yeah. Let's go back to the mindset. I would just check it here. Let's go back to the mindset. All right. And this is why mindset is so important. The SMME is not scaling too fast. They're taking advantage of the opportunities that there are. But I'm still in this part here. I've got 2 employees. So what do I have to do? I focus on my 2 employees. Now I need 4. So I'm still going to do it. No. You're forever going back, developing self, then going through the system until you achieve growth. You always have to go back to self and understand for yourself that I can't do it, JP can't do it. But bring you in, now we can grow. It's understanding that you on your own cannot do things. We have to work together to achieve where we want to go.
To that point, and Thabane, I'll bring you in a moment, Thabile. a term was used yesterday about a founder syndrome. Maybe I didn't understand it properly, but in this context, when the founder can't get out of their own head and thinks that they have to do every single thing themselves, is that also, you're describing it as a limitation, but is that also one of the biggest limitations, is people's ability to delegate and trust and bring in more experts?
Exactly. Because when you look at a company like Virgin, okay, and we look at how Virgin grew from literally from nothing, what was the secret behind that? Is bringing in the right people at the right time. Okay, because the issue with a lot of SMMEs is that we want to be the boss and we want to control everything. We can't. We have to start thinking differently.
Okay. Tabile, maybe you can come in here just to this point and then we can move on, is when you bring in the right people, the right expertise, the right financial skills, they cost money. And you're out here managing your operations at whatever turnover, but to grow, that talent costs you money. That expansion costs you money, whether it's rental, utilities, hiring lawyers, it costs you money. Growth costs money.
Yeah, certainly. You know, if there's one thing that with the few years that I've been, because it's been a few years, I want to mention that the space that I'm currently operating on is the fact that you really need to have the right person in the right place at the right time. And this also had to do with the policies that you're going to bring into your business. I will make an example about last week we attended something in Bronxspruit. There was a deputy minister, trade and agriculture there. So we were looking in terms of the transformation that was happening in the past few businesses that the state with the private sector has been assisting, particularly with the poultry industry. So the issue there was an alignment issues between what the state was offering and what the market and the industry was offering. So for government to fund a business, particularly in the poultry industry, they needed someone to be maybe, say, around 200,000 beds to get into the business and then you operate in that. But a lot of them, they needed money to get to that. So a lot of people that were within those business, a lot of them, they were failing and whatnot. So the industry came in and said, look, we are doing something incorrect here. We want to be part of this, but unfortunately, you're going to have to adjust your policies. And then a lot of people actually get to be released in now both at the positions within the state and those that were within the industry. So the issue of the person, the right person, was in fact there. This is 2019, now we're 2026. So as a result of those few changes that were made to assist those businesses, in 2019, we were producing around, I think 19 million beds, you know, in South Africa, but as of today, we're around 23 million. And so this is only because there were few people that actually is an issue, even the issue of transformation. So we tend to talk about transformation and whatnot, but you can talk transformation as much as you want. But if you're not putting the right people that understand it, minister himself, herself, if you will tell him one thing today and then tomorrow on the news, you're getting something else. But you'll be like, but we spoke about this, you know. Hopefully this doesn't get to media, by the way. You know, so it's a matter of communicating, you know, these issues correctly, you know, the businesses themselves understand it. And of course, the data issues that we were talking about, because we can't really address any of these things if we are not really understanding what's going on.
So you're speaking to a topic that also was alluded to yesterday, and this idea of aggregation, whether you are aggregating the pool of resources on the supply side or on the financing side, so that you meet the demand that the market needs. Perhaps as we're talking about driving functioning markets, let's talk about this, Tabile.
Yeah, so, you know, there's what we call an ITEC. I don't know if you know ITEC is within the Department of Trade in South Africa. So they're dealing with administration of, you know, what is coming in, the policies around that. So for the past 10 years, I've been looking in terms of the request that they come to us for the industry wanting to import certain products that are not in this country at the particular time. So I was invited in Northwest, a province that was actually doing good in this product at one point. There's what we call a paprika. Yes. I don't know how many of you who knows which season, which months that you have paprika, and then some 3 or 4 months, you don't have it at all in South Africa. We don't have it in Botswana. We don't have it in Zimbabwe. We don't have it. We get it in Zambia and in China only. So these are the things that when you are to think about getting into a business, and unfortunately, we don't communicate these as much as possible. You're not gonna be able to make money, something you said. If you want to get into these businesses, these markets, if you want to get into potatoes in Limpopo, you're probably not gonna make it because that province is massive into it. You probably go to Eastern Cape, there's a land into it. There's a land in KZN. They are actually getting there because of the assistance between the industry and government. So going to the Paprika thing, I'm talking to this farmer, I'm saying, look, we are importing around a ton to 10, depending on a year, 1,000 kilograms of this from October to November of the following year. There's control systems. Why don't you get into this? If there's a money, TIC has money, the agriculture has money, you have people that can assist to get into this. If I can tell you today, that farmer is into that business, he's making a lot of money, but still, we're still, buying a lot of that. So it's a matter of us understanding the markets, what it needs. You're not gonna produce something for the sake of was saying. You don't think I'm doing well in one thing and think you're gonna do the same. You're gonna have to do a little bit of twist on that, or just go to something entirely different because there's so much market out there.
All right, so much market out there, Lesego. Let's talk about demand aggregation, procurement systems, value chain integration, because this example of Limpopo sort of speaks to those issues. You can't just wake up as Leraut and say, there are lots of potato farms in Limpopo, I'll just get into it. Market already exists, relationships exist. Maybe go to KZN, replicate the model. Funding is there to help you, land is there to get you farming. Then there are the network of retailers and logistics there that are looking for potatoes. Maybe you can do it there, but you can't do it where the market already is established. Help us understand that.
So for me, it's also supported. It's not only about where you go, but it's also supported by what is available. So if you look at Botswana from a procurement perspective, I remember there was a time when the Woolworths cake, do you know the Woolworths caramel cake? So the Woolworths caramel cake is import.
So, you know why we're laughing? Because Woolworths came up yesterday as a naughty person. So I wonder how the story ends for them.
I'm not being naughty, but the Woolworths caramel cake used to leave South Africa to go to Botswana. It was baked in South Africa. And Botswana said, are you sure we can't make this Woolworths caramel cake? I'm sure we can. And when there are supportive policies, then you're able to say to Woolworths, hold up, my people can actually make this cake. Woolworths, well, they made the cake, it didn't work. But Woolworths said it's not of the same quality. But going back to supportive procurement systems, where you say there will be a set aside for people that are in my country, there will be specific things or a manner in which you support businesses that operate in my country, particularly those that are citizens, because that's the only way that I'm able to get them to grow, right? There will be things that you allocate from a capacity building perspective to say there will be capacity building programs that I'm going to provide to these particular enterprises so that they're able to compete. So I think it's making sure that you have those in place.
Okay, so this example speaks to regulatory intervention as an enabler. So what is regulation that is an enabler, Lesego, versus regulation that stifles? Because that also came up yesterday, is when the regulator misses the mark, it's a disaster.
And what you're saying is when the regulator understands, it unlocks. There's a balance here.
Yes, and I think it goes back to understanding which enterprise are you supporting specifically. So if I go back to the example that I used about the micro informal business that's operating in Tembisa, and I say to them, you need to register, you need to be VAT compliant, you need to be, then I might be stifling, right? Because am I ready to get into that space? Do I have the capacity to be able to do that? But also, do I have the correct skills in order for me to do that? Have you provided me with those skills in order for me to be able to facilitate what you're asking of me? A lot of these enterprises will tell you that I don't even have the 75 rand to go to CIPC and register. And then you require me to then pay it annually. Is it fair on me? Is it something that I should be doing? So there are ways, I think for me and from our organization, we always think about things from a demand perspective. Go into the ground, speak to the people that you're trying to support, and tailor make regulations so that it supports them at the level that they are at.
I don't mean to belabor this, but I recently was somewhere else and we weren't really talking about ESD, but e-governance was coming up and Singapore came up as an example of how in Singapore, when you do a simple thing like apply for an ID, that data is used to lead you to many different services. So once you've registered for a passport and ID, when you apply for a bank loan, the bank doesn't have to ask you to fill in pieces of paper. That alone, that portal tells them who you are. If there's a death in your family, probate happens right there through the access of that information. Anything and everything that you need. So suddenly, even if you're registering a business, the fact that you are a legally recognized person in Singapore means everything they need from credit scoring happens online. And so it limits your need for all this admin, technical data gathering, because it's sitting there on a centralized portal. I know CIPC will lead you to maybe somebody who can open a bank account, etc. But is there more that they could do to just simplify things for the SME?
So I think South Africa Inc. operates in silos and we have fragmented policies and how we implement them. We have a lot of great policies that could potentially support these enterprises, but we operate them in silos. And I think it's getting that and coordinating that to make sure that you then support these enterprises. So I'm going to mention again the program that we're working on. And the intention for us is really for us to try and see how do you sequence interventions to a point where a person is able to gradually get out of a specific situation. So this particular program focuses on grant recipients particularly. Funny, grant recipients, when you register, you will say to SASSA that I'm a grant recipient and this is how much I earn, I'm unemployed, etc. But it ends there. No one says, what would you like to do? No one says, are you interested in entrepreneurship? But even if you are, then it means you are referred again to, if you're a young person, you're gonna go to NYDA and access maybe training. That training does not necessarily result in you getting the funding that you require. Then you need to go elsewhere to get the funding that you require for that particular business. You've been trained, then someone says, but I didn't see that you were trained. But that's because we don't have an environment or a digital platform that actually collects this information and is able to say to an NYDA, I've actually trained Lesego, go to Lesego, she's ready to start a business. That business will function on XYZ. But it's also not able to say, Lesego is still at a lower level, she needs a mentor. And they're able to say, please go mentor Lesego. It's not able to say, I think we were talking about the fact that growth is expensive, right? It's not able to say, Lesego seems to be growing now. what are the programs that are available in the country that could provide her with the skills that she requires? You have programs where we employ young people that do specific things. If I need an accountant, why am I not able to tap into a YES program and say, I want an accountant from a YES program? So I think it's the fragmented approach that we have in the country that stifles these SMEs we're talking about.
So even that technical support is siloed. It's there.
It is
but it's
there,
not
but it's not, it doesn't reach the enterprise.
And that impacts the growth, the scalability, the access, the knowledge that the SME has. JP,
Can I just say on this? Because I think she is talking about something that is very important and practical in other countries, to say the least. So a couple of years ago, I'm not sure which year it was, Shoprite wanted to operate, actually was operating already in Zambia and other neighboring countries there. But the problem was the Zambian government, the issue that they had with that was the fact that Shoprite was buying everything from South Africa. And Zambia has farmers. Actually, Zambia is doing very well, even closer to what South Africa is doing. It's just that in the small scale. So the government said, look, we're not going to tolerate these guys. We are buying as far as potatoes from South Africa. We can have land, we have water, we can produce these things. Why are you not buying in South Africa? Then it goes back to the issue of the right support, the proper development program that you're going to have for your people. So what happened was this, because as I was saying earlier on, that African countries, South Africa is verified by a number of things. We have policies, as she's mentioning, but the matter of implementing them. So what happened in Zambia was that Shoprite said, look, we are buying chicken in South Africa because the chickens that you're producing here is like birds. Our hungry lion is not going to be able to buy those. So you need to get a chicken to this size. And then they said, look, it's fine. You're going to help us get to do that. They brought folks from Zambia to South Africa, work with SAPA, South African Association for Poultry, and to help them. And then eventually farmers, young farmers in Zambia are the ones supplying a hungry lion today. And that's something that the government worked, and actually they went as far as developing something similar to ITEC. The issue of regulation, there was no regulation there. They were saying, look, but this guy is not going to work for us. We want your business, but we don't want it at this form. Same thing applies for, I think there was an issue with more watermelons, because Zambia has so much water. The watermelon is tend to be different if you're looking to a site from the one in South Africa. They have to also do the same. The Potato SA was working with them. So it's a measure of things. So, but they stopped buying a larger quantities of those from South Africa. And as a result, thousands of young farmers and businesses, exporters and everything in Zambia today, they are doing excellent job supplying value chains, and actually even the neighboring countries, and thanks to the simple policy that was developed, and of course South Africa supplying service to that.
Okay, so that's almost sort of local content, for lack of a better word, where you're empowering the local farmers to integrate them into this multinational retailer from South Africa, who would need produce locally sourced, probably even fresher, but by South African health standards or whatever the case may be. Okay, JP, I want to bring you into this one, because I think the question also in developing dynamic functioning markets is making them stable. And when you hear of the ShopRite example, a big retailer with deep pockets who can buy from the local producers is a form of stability. But if that retailer pulls out of that market, what happens?
You've just said it. So there's this perception that if I have a contract to supply ShopRite, okay, I'm set, guys. I'm fine. I can supply. We heard yesterday what happened with Woolworths.
Woolworths and the chocolate baker. That's why we laughed.
Sorry. It's a perception. You continuously have to build where you are going. So if we look at what we are talking about in this specific summit now, where you're integrating and you're bringing together, it's not about me as an entrepreneur. We all want to be farmers, but that's not the whole value chain. It is time we start showing people within the value chain different opportunities to develop businesses to supply into that value chain. And if we really want to make this work, we have to look at it from a regional basis, from a region's perspective. And again, because it's my pet, I'm going to use Tugela Ferry as an example. You're integrating the region. So the region, within the region, there's different parts within that value chain where SMMEs can develop and grow and expand. You can't work in silos like we do.
Okay, I'm going to need you to elaborate that for me. So when we say region KZN, it's not a region.
No, that's very big.
That's a province.
That's a province.
Okay.
So when I say a region, it is literally taking an irrigation scheme like Tugela Ferry, which is an irrigation scheme. It's in the Msinga district. Okay. So what we have done there, and it's not just us doing it, you know, we always say we doing it. No, it's the community doing it. It's the business people on the ground doing it. But it's a development, it's a way of developing where the government institutions, and by the way, there's no grant funding happening there. These are things that people are doing themselves. Okay? Because in South Africa, we're spoiled. Right? In other countries where we work, people are not spoiled. Exactly what you were alluding to earlier. You really have to put in effort to actually make it. So in Msinga, that's the situation. It is about we have to provide for our families, for our children. So it's this little town and everybody in this little town starting to work together to achieve a positive outcome for the future.
Okay. Anybody want to respond to that?
I think it's similar to, so we had a program that we ran in Lesotho, and it was a supplier development program with businesses that are in the agricultural sector. And funny, there was no government money that came in. So the first thing that we started with was looking at what private institutions are available to support from a funding perspective at the time when these businesses will require the funding. But the phase one of the program started off with us actually assessing the level at which these businesses are operating and what is required for them to grow. The second part was who then supports them. Do we need to find experts that are able to guide these particular enterprises so that they then get the expertise that they require? These experts would also help them with things like when you put together when you want a loan or when you apply for credit, these are the things that you're going to have to look at. But then these experts also help them think about you're going to have to meet standards in order for you to be able to export whatever that you make, but also to sell it to the ShopRites and to sell it to the Woolworths because there are standards that are applicable. And they help them navigate what those standards are, but also help them navigate what it is required in order for them to meet those standards. And through that, they are now able to get funding from Standard Bank Lesotho that funds them, and they are now able to export some of the produce that they make. So I think it's going back to thinking about from a demand side, from this person that you're trying to support, assess and understand, and based on that, support them so that they're able to scale.
All right, so let's go back to the central thesis of this conversation before we go to the audience. And if I asked you to sum it up for me, what are we talking about here? Because there is the Chinese government saying as of the 1st of May, tariff-free access for goods made in Africa or goods produced in Africa. Then you hear Minister John Steenhuisen saying, this is a huge opportunity for South African farmers. So if I'm a farmer, must I be excited by this news that I could get my produce or my goods into China? Or would you say to me, hang on a minute, are you ready to enter China? Because that is a market, that is trade, That is a global value chain. The opportunity is just standing there for me to take it up. What do I need to take it up, JP?
All right, so we all get excited about this because now there's extra market. But the requirements to enter that market, none of us are really ready. And I'm talking about from an SMME perspective. Okay, we're not ready. We can aggregate and we can come up with all these fancy things. But in order to get into that market, the Chinese market has got requirements. They're going to come and audit us. Okay, so now you become an approved supplier. Whether we've aggregated doesn't make a difference. It is exactly what you were saying now. Let's first understand the environment from the bottom at baseline. Understand baseline before we start and get up there and come up with these beautiful dreams that create hope for people and we are not implementing.
Okay, thanks. I think JP, for this one for me is personal because, and also my minister was mentioned. So yeah, I'm gonna be careful with it. I think one for South Africa. I think let me just give a little bit of context. I'm gonna try to be very quick about this. So South Africa in Africa, it is the only country within the top 40 countries in the world exporting agriculture to the world. And that is not by chance. It is because of the fact that we are operating at a huge scale. About 28 to 30 commercial farmers are producing that, with around 10% of them also producing and supplying the country. The issue that South Africa has is oversupply of products and also from big players. So now, through the master plan that we are pushing from the organization that I work for, we are the one implementing it. So the plan there is to say, let's open the market so that the big players can open up a space. Because the issue is, we have a market that, for instance, if you have to talk about fruit, South Africa is the #1 producer of citrus, apples, grapes, but name it, in the continent. And then we go to the world, we're in the top 10 of all of those. We have massive. So we need to open that space up. But now the issue is, specifically with Margaret Lerato, is the fact that China, for us, it has been limiting us because we had what they call it, tariffs. For instance, if you have to talk about wine, our wine, South Africa has been producing wine for over years. I think it's one of the oldest industries in the country. Even when during the apartheid, the wine was being exported as smuggled to the country, to the world. We are big at that. So the issue, it has been the tariff. So if they are removing those tariffs, it doesn't have to be all the commodities or the products that we are producing, but those like the likes of beef, for instance, macadamia, which is a very big commodity that we are making billions with it. It's important that it gets to that at a competitive, because we can't compete with Australia because of the tariffs. It's closer to China. We have a distance, we have tariffs. It doesn't make profit business in terms of us exporting it. So it's going to open up a space. But now what we want to do is for the small guys, to make sure that they are filling in the gap that now, the wine that was sold in South Africa is getting to be pushed now into China. China is a billion market in terms of the humans. Actually, its middle class is bigger than the US population. It's that massive. So that's why we've been saying, let's just open it, but it's not going to be everything, because it's only a few commodities, of course, for now that we are selling to that are going to access our things.
Very briefly, Tabile, I can tell this is personal for you, but I'm just saying, if I am a producer of whatever in South Africa, and suddenly I hear no tariffs in China, does that automatically mean I can access these global value chains? And if I can't, what is the help I need?
Certainly not. Not everything. For as I was telling that some products are going to be able to get into the Chinese market right now, but there's still going to be talks for years to come. Because as much as we want to sell to China, China also want to sell to us, right? That's another thing. So it's like what been happening in the SACU region. Recently, I think you've been seeing a lot of the restrictions. Botswana closing that, Namibia is doing that, Mozambique is contemplating, the Lesotho is doing the same. But the reality is, we're going to have to understand that it's not going to be a smooth road. For one, everyone will want to sell to that market, but unfortunately, everyone is going to be able to get into it for a number of reasons. But now this is when we're going to have to bring in the issues of the industry, because South Africa is a very organized sectors. Let's work with Hodro. Both Hodros know that is supplying these. Hodro, we have about 5 small scale farmers that are producing apples in Free State, and their apples get better and get early for the market, earlier than yours, whilst Chile is still late. Can you just assist these farmers getting to then sell our apples to the Chinese market? Those are kind of talks that we're going to have to have. It's not going to be easy. People are going to be frustrated. Unfortunately, that's how the world works. China is going to say, I need this. And if you're supplying something that doesn't need, it's going to say, we're going to talk. It's going to give you 28 years like it did with apples. I think was it Thailand? With Thailand, we've been negotiating Thailand for 20 years for apples. We only got to access that market last year. So those are the things that, I think JP did mention it. It's not going to be simple, but we're excited that at least for those that are already getting into that market, now they're going to be competitive into getting it. And of course, they're going to open up space for other, small projects that we're doing.
Thank you. So Lesotho, the title is Markets. Example, China, huge market, 1 billion people, 1 point something billion people. Trade, tariffs and removing tariffs, value chains. That's a global value chain. So if you hear an opportunity like that and you produce whatever you produce in South Africa, are you good to go, or who needs to help you get there?
So for a minute, I'll be excited, and then I'll realize that I shouldn't be excited. And that's only because, like my colleagues have said, am I ready? Some of us will be ready, some won't. And because it's a program that government is aware of, for me, it's thinking about what are the support structures that I need to put in place in order for me to get these S and the M's ready to do this? Is it the entrepreneurship, mentorship that is required? Is it access to funding? Because you're making assumptions that I have enough to actually be able to produce at scale. And what funding what does the funding look like? Is it tailor-made for me? Does it understand what I require? Does it understand the different elements that I will require? From an insurance perspective, does it understand what type of insurance I require? Will it lapse because I didn't pay because I was in a season where I was not able to produce and I was not able to pay? It's a combination of things. So for me, it's thinking about it from an SA Inc. perspective and saying, again, what I said with the Lesotho program, where are my enterprises that are producing this particular product? What support do I need to provide to them? And that support does not need to be a blanket approach. It will be at different levels depending on where that enterprise is.
Okay, so there's a lot that's being said now that we're using this China example, and now I'm ready for questions from the floor. So from what I've heard from you, JP, is even if you're doing well in your region, now that I understand what the region is, doesn't even necessarily mean you're ready to access all of South Africa, let alone China, when you hear that they've removed tariff barriers. And for you to get ready to access rest of the country or region, Lesotho, what you've said is, do you have trade facilitation financing? Do you have trade insurance? Because if your oranges get lost at sea, who's going to pay for that? It doesn't matter that they've removed tariff barriers. Once your product lands in China, somebody's got to distribute for you. That's money. Yes, the government can help you access the market, but there's a lot you're going to need to do, boots on ground. And then what you've said, Tabile, is your oranges may be wonderful in Limpopo, but if the Chinese don't want them, you have a problem. And maybe you should be thinking about something else that you are trading in China that speaks to that market. And if those protocols haven't been negotiated, you've got an even bigger problem, because tariffs are down, but in terms of product and portfolio and profile, has what you produce been negotiated at that high regulatory level? As they say on the streets, kuningi. But if anybody would like to add.
That's an important question for me. And then you talk about the silo mentality. So who's mandated to fix this? I mean, we keep asked, and yesterday it was raised as well. Let's work together, let's collaborate. But who's mandated to fix this problem? And the third question is you spoke about local production for local procurement. And so does it make sense for smaller towns in South Africa to think about, apart from agriculture and buying tomatoes and potatoes from local farmers, but for local entrepreneurs to be upskilled to take on more municipal projects, to take on school maintenance around chairs and desks, and even maybe to produce school uniforms, as an example? Does that make any sense? And do you think it'll affect the cost of the commodity at the end? Thanks.
All right, so there are quite a few questions. Maybe we should attempt to answer them so we don't forget them. A lot of it has to do with what's happening at the local economic development level.
Right. So local economic development, one of the things that is a major issue is the outflow of capital in these communities, because again, it's about the schools, the uniforms, everything. Where does it get made? It gets made outside. We firmly believe that economy should circulate. You create a circular economy within the region. Why must I come from outside and now come and fix a road where there is perfectly skilled people in the area? So it comes back to information, right? Without information, I'm not going to know as a business person, right? People say, but yes, there's the tenders online. How many of us can access these things online, right? And then you have to apply to all these things. It's not going to work. It's these barriers. So the first one is fully agreed. You have to create that circular economy in the town, in the local town.
I think I'm just going to take a second. Thanks. So, there's so much. I'm sorry to say this. I'm working for the state myself. Don't throw stones at me when I'm living here. I'm not making the big decisions. So not so long ago, I was invited in Eastern Cape to make a presentation during this period where Trump was doing a lot of tantrums in terms of tariffs and whatnot, blah, blah, blah. So the province was looking in terms of how is that going to impact them. So I get to the province, and then I'm talking to the key stakeholders, the big bosses and whatnot. So I'm asking them, based on what you have, Eastern Cape is a huge agricultural province. Actually, is dominating a lot of livestock, cattle, pork, beef. I mean, sorry, you can name them. It's one of the leading producers of that in this country, including the dairies and whatnot. So only to realize that some folks from certain districts, that key products that are being sold to the US, they don't even know them. So I'm saying to them, the biggest, for instance, I don't think even if you can say it here, the biggest producer product that Eastern Cape was selling to the US, that is making over close to $1 billion of things of exports, is ice cream. But because they know that we are leading in livestock production, they assumed that that is going to be the product that is going to be sold there. So the issue of not knowing what is there now, especially from the state, because we're talking something else at national, then you move to the province, they're talking something else, then to the district, it's totally something different. It's a chaos. So you don't know. This is when now the agencies like Westgrow, I don't know if all of you know Westgrow in Western Cape. I wanted to work for them, but they didn't employ me. Then I got employed to the national level, but I'm doing the same job. So one thing that Western Cape is functioning so well is because of that agency. They're getting proper information for certain commodities, like for someone that can easily produce the thing that you close the wine with. They know those details. But if you have to go to elsewhere, it's not. It does not exist. And there are agencies, there are institutions that are supposed to be doing that. Until we get to sort that out, if it's posed question, also, I think there was a question that who should solve that. It's for all of us. It's not like if myself I'm failing, you are also going to sit down not doing anything. The country itself is suffering and you are part of this country. It's like if you're saying crime is happening, they can build all the fences, but eventually it's going to get into you.
Before Lesego comes in, and I struggle to do this because we can't always hold up the Western Cape as a beacon of light, but it is what it is. You've used them as an example.
Sorry.
So it's not as if people don't know what to do. You can just go to the Western Cape and say, how do you crystallize and synthesize and coordinate all this information, and then just use the same portal? Why are we struggling to do it in other provinces? Why are we struggling to get that chain of command, national, provincial, right down to the local level, and then those agencies? What's the problem? Because they apparently are doing it in the Western Cape.
Employing the right person to the right position, simple. Because for me, like if I want information, for instance, there was this time president was going to the US during this Trump thing. So we're traveling for the G20 thing. I'm calling the boss in Western Cape. Look, I'm saying the president is coming to these guys and ministers to the US. I need specific information, this A, B, and C. He did not, play around, act as a big boss and whatever, because I'm junior to her. He just said, contact this person and this person, they're going to give the information. By 12 midnight, I was done with the presentation, this information, I just disseminated it to the relevant people. Then they went to the US with it, simple. But other provinces, I don't even want to say it. At least KZN is coming, Gauteng is coming. I'm sorry, I'm in Gauteng, but you're trying, but unfortunately, not to the power, but there's something that is happening. But unfortunately, until we get people that, when you ask them information, they don't send you to an intern that just got there for 6 weeks, has nothing, doesn't know anything there.
So Tabila is saying that they're all lazy. I don't work for government, so I can say that. So if you're looking at the local economic development departments, for me, I don't think you need to do away with them. I think they're supposed to be playing an important role. And maybe it goes back to what we're saying here, that maybe there is a gap in, I don't know if it's the attitude to doing what we need to do to support the South African citizen, because you are employed to serve the South African citizen. Those LED departments are supposed to make sure that at any point in time, when I try and understand what markets exist in Tembisa that I referred to, they should be able to guide me. I think we have what we also call, that are done by NDA, community development plans, that are meant to help guide you on what is available and what could be done in that community. But they're not there. And the question is, what do we need to put in place in order for us to make sure that those that are employed by the state understand that they are serving citizens in South Africa, and they are not there to disappear when you need information. They are actually there to make sure that you get the information that you require. And I guess it then goes back to who's supposed to do that. I don't know.
So we're saying where does it start? Okay, whose responsibility is it? So we could have wasted all of our own time, yeah, for 2 days. Or everybody that is here can actually start working, not talking. We're very good at this talking thing. We can actually start implementing things in the regions, because there is so much talent out there. There is so much support. Don't stop a summit. We go to these summits and that's where it ends. We all go home. There should be follow-up, and we should be implementing what is agreed at these summits. We have to do it, not other people.
Just conscious of time. I know there's a question, sir. And before you ask, anybody else with a question? Okay, that will be the last question.
JP, I fully agree with you. I think the focus point must be on a regional level, purely from economies of scale. It's critical that we need to get the regions to start working together as a unison mechanism. Second comment that I'd like to make is I think the focus must lie on the central nervous system on a regional level. We keep on talking about silo mentalities, and I think that this is where regional government comes into play and not provincial on a regional level. We're working in the Waterberg region. It's critical that the local government there needs to be empowered with the necessary tools to bring about that central nervous system. Further comment that I'd like to make is I think, and forgive me for saying this, but I think there's a misperception amongst government officials on local, regional level where they think that they need to be the ones orchestrating or being responsible for job creation. There's a lot of focus on that at the moment on JET. And in Waterberg specifically, every municipality there is now squandering around to try and set up their own IPPs. They want to tap into the national grid. No data, no support. Question is, why are they wanting to play in that field? Isn't their job to collate the data and make sure that we empower the communities, that we empower the private sector? So I also want to comment on what you said just now. Who must take up this task? The short and the long is there's at the moment there's a disconnect between private sector and government. There's a distrust, and I see all over the room here the word trust underneath a name, a brand. It's Kagiso. So, yeah, we need to. I think our responsibility is to be the ones that installs trust again. And trust can only be installed where there's knowledge and understanding of one another. If I don't know who you are, how can I trust you? And private sector and government needs to be nurtured back into an environment where they can trust one another. Thank you.
Just concur.
I agree. I think for us to get the SMEs to where they need to be, it's a coordinated effort between the private sector and government. I always use an example about DFIs, mainly because the organization I work with focuses mainly from a financial inclusion perspective. In my mind, there's a role that a DFI can play, but if that role enabled the private sector to then take over, I think we would be creating winning solutions for those that require funding. So if CIFA and APSA play in the same space, I don't know who we're trying to support. But if CIFA said, I'm going to take the M's, I'm going to get them ready for you, APSA, to take them over when I'm done. What do you need me to do? Yeah. Then I think we would be opening it up and making sure that we are coordinating our efforts. I think for me, the coordination, and you're right, JP, it's actually up to us to make sure that what we talk about here comes to fruition. I think oftentimes, I mean, when I got a call and I was told that I must come talk again, I was like, I don't know, when are we going to have an action plan that's held by someone that says, you said you would do X, Y, Z. How far are you with what you said? And a person that would monitor this on a regular basis to a point where 5 years from now, because we have strategies, all of them are 5-year plans, but no one ever says after a year, how far are you? What have you done? What does it look like? What support do you need?
Yeah.
Okay, let's all rally behind what you're doing so that we can get to the next
Yeah.
step. So that 5 years from now, we're able to say, we're not worried about these entities not accessing markets. We now have figured it out. We now need to think about something else, right? Maybe they access markets at a local level, then they go to the SADC region, then they go to Pan-Africa, as you said, then they global. But we had a plan, and that plan, we stuck to it and we were monitoring it. And I think that's the gap. We talk.
Yeah.
We talk, we write policies, and we don't necessarily action what we talk about.
I think that's a very powerful place to leave it on many, many levels. I love what you've just said about the local development agencies readying the SMEs for the big syndicated capital at commercial level and recognizing that they're not competing with those big banks. They are helping people level up to that role. The point that was made about local government versus national government, etc., it's again local government understanding its role, provide the services and the utilities that just make these industries run better. Just make sure the roads are maintained, make sure there's water in the pipes, make sure there's electricity in the grid. That's it. You don't have to think you're going to negotiate with Trump. That's not your job. Somebody else is already doing that at a national level. And then once you want to connect your business to markets outside of that local area, we can add the second tier of government, but you can't be doing all and sundry. So maybe it's a reset that South Africa needs. It seems to me like it is. Just that national dialogue is about just saying, can everybody understand your role? And just do your bit, and that's it. Do your bit. Thank you so much to you, JP Leroux, CEO of FarmPex, Mr. Tabile Nkunjana, Senior Trade Economist at the National Agricultural Marketing Council. You said you were really scared if you left here, we'd throw stones at you. JP said, no, we'd be throwing apples at you. Lesego Mashego, Head of SA Inclusion, Financial Inclusion at Finmark Trust. And thank you for your questions as well. Okay, we're going to move on to what is a fireside chat before our tea break. And before I introduce to you our speaker who's going to be giving us the international experience, a request has come through that I invite Mr. Modise Motloba of Tysus Capital to just share a small insight and strategic contribution on their experiences in market development for SMEs. So if I may defer to Mr. Modise Motloba quickly to just give us some insights on how you develop a market from an SME perspective. Yes, sir, go ahead. Use the microphone.
Thank you. So my name is Modise Motloba. I'm the Group CEO of Tysus Capital Group. Our claim to fame is really enterprise and supply development practitioner. So we implement that for corporates. So I'll just give you experience and how we continue to drive markets to make sure that SMMEs, are being looked at and for on a sustainable basis. What is a good thing about ESD in our country is that it tries to figure out how do we deal with particularly the three key areas: access to markets and access to finance and access to capacity building. It's a good piece of legislation. I don't know if people have recognized that, because you can expand it globally, even beyond, the corporates, the SMMEs that are below 50 million from a turnover point of view. So how then we figured that out. We started more looking at it from an access to finance point of view as a company, because we're a financial sector company. But we then stumbled and we got into challenges of access to markets specifically. Historically, if you look at the ecosystem of ESD, the responsibility really lies with the corporates to provide that. But there were just two challenges. One is that procurement in terms of directed at SMMEs, a lot of entities and corporates don't have proper policies to deal with that,
So that's one, and that means even if they do have the database, it's not functional. It's it's corrupt. So they don't know who they're dealing with and when last did they even deal with that SMMEs in this regard. So that was the first challenge. The second challenge was just the policy, just generally, because when you want to create a proper ecosystem with SMMEs, it has to be informed at a board level. You know, you've got social and ethics committees within boards that should actually define the policies and strategies around that and get management to run with it. So what did we do? We realized that there's a gap there, and we started offering, you know, the service of policies, you know, driving this ecosystems, policies and strategies in that space and influence it from, you know, what is it that we want to achieve? How do we even achieve it? The governance issues around it, the operationalized issues around it, and really making a much more deliberate process around access to markets, if we were to use that. You know, what allocation, how would procurement department work with this, and which commodities would add be provided to. And we find varying experiences. Some of the companies, they have a sense. Some of them, they think it's more peripheral kind of function. And remember, from an ESG, it's more of a compliance issue. So just getting their mindset to move beyond compliance into saying we're creating a marketplace for SMMEs to thrive has been a big challenge. So we thought that's where we started intervening with a lot of them. So we say, do you have it? If you don't have it, we'll help you. And I think from that, it starts really just streamlining the process of access to markets, which is a big challenge that we deal with. So after that, then if they are trusters, we can implement the program. We then start looking at the instruments within access to markets. So our challenge in most of them is that they use purchase orders, short-term purchase orders to support SMMEs. And maybe some of them would have contracts, but still not robust enough and without the necessary support to deal with that. So we then intervene to say, can we then at least encourages you to provide sustainable procurement opportunities for these entities. If it's a PO, make it a set of POs, give the sense to the SMMEs that they'll be there for a while. And if you can, please make it a contract, 3 to 5 year contract, because these are commodities that you want. And a lot of our work are in the mining sector, which is a very interesting sector because, and I always say the mining company is like it's like a microcosm of a company. They procure all, really, if you were to use that. And there's a lot of predictability, except of course the currency and the commodities pricing like we're experiencing now. But they can plan better from that end. And therefore in that we would then encourage them to provide, the right kind of instruments for sustainability on these SMMEs. So we would influence that process, and it's a difficult one because you find existing policies around procurement, you're trying to influence them. But we always revert back to the Social and Ethics Committee and make sure that at least there's a lot of support towards that. So that's the second thing that we daily do to create these markets. The third thing around access to markets then that we get involved in this corporates, and we use corporates really because we like them. If they streamline their processes, then the sustainability. It's just to really now look for the right kind of easier way of procuring services. A lot of corporate clients, they use sophisticated systems, EPR systems, that from a procurement is not easy to go in, and having to tweak them to be able to enable SMMEs can be very difficult. For instance, from a 30-day payment cycle to 7 days payment cycle, if you ask somebody in those corporates to change that, it may sometimes takes a while. So that being the problem. If you're financing as financiers, you ask for a session, just a session can be a problem. So what we do then, we work with them to streamline and tailor-make their system to be able then to talk through to an enabling environment for the SMMEs in as far as the access to markets is concerned. So a lot of work there, a lot of negotiations and pushing through EXCO and to make sure that that is streamlined towards that. And then fourthly, then it becomes issues of standards, access, providing the right information. Our SMMEs sometimes struggle because they are not as compliant demand is expected from the corporate. So we would work with them in providing that support, but also in asking the corporates to make it easier for them. Some of the requirements, I'll make another example. You're looking at a small SMMEs and you're asking for annual financial statements to get them to the system. That can be a challenge. So we then look at standardizing, basically working with them to standardize how then do we provide effective access to markets for these entities, using different systems and just making it that is tailor-made for that. So when that is done, we also then get further involved. So we're not like looking at one corporate clients. We then create a marketplace for these SMMEs from an access point of view. So one of the things we do referrals. So if I know there's an SMME, I'm working with that company A, and there's an opportunity at company B, I make sure that they come on board so that they can create a critical mass. Now, there's also a selfish reason for us to do that. It's not just to grow them, but if we are coming as financiers, it's better off to know that there's multiple sources of revenue for the SMMEs that are relying on one entity. So we then play that active role. It's in our interest, to be very frank, to make sure that they get as much procurement opportunity. So we then create network forums for SMMEs and corporates to get that going and really get going. Lastly, which is another piece of enabling access for this SMMEs, is funding. Fortunately for us as a company, we've played a role and actually got corporates who are able to provide grants, zero interest loans, and maybe tailor making some of the funding structure to the contract, to the PO, but also more importantly, the cycles of repayment. I think we financiers sometimes we want monthly payments. If you're a farmer, we would only have to look at your harvesting season. That's when you have the revenue to pay us. So we try and innovate around funding and make sure that it matches much more 100% with the access to markets dynamics that one has in this regard. So that's really how we do that. And lastly, just monitoring and making sure that all of that is in place and engaging with the SMMEs and our corporate clients in this regard. So that's how holistic we're looking at it. It's a marketplace in terms of access to markets rather than just the ones off. But all of those parameters, including training, capacity building becomes part of the key tenets of strengthening the access to markets aspect of the business. Thank you.
Thank you so much for mapping that for us. Financial stability begins with a lot of that technical input, financial reporting, compliance, making sure that your standards uphold what's required by the procurer. And if you can do that and you're consistent, then more and more business flows your way and you can network, and then suddenly you've got a pipeline of contracts you can meet because you just comply with various requirements on financial reporting and planning and execution. Thank you for that input. Now we're going to have what we call the international experience and looking at other models. I know yesterday when we spoke about cooperatives, whether cooperative funding or aggregation of products, we looked at New Zealand and Australia, or we referenced New Zealand and Australia. Today, we're going to talk about Germany. Germany often held up on many levels as kind of the gold standard, especially when it comes to entrepreneurship. I know that we always talk about Germany in vocational training. Many people think that everybody in Germany is this, highly qualified PhD engineer. It's not actually. That's 45% of the market. 50% of the market are vocationally trained apprentices who've gone on and started their own businesses and contribute significantly to the economy. And it's been a model that's worked. So we're going to hear about what they do as we look at the German Cooperative and Raiffeisen Confederation, DGRF. Speaking to us about it, coming to us from that organization is Thandeka Tabata, the Senior Program Advisor for the German Cooperative and Raiffeisen Confederation. Thandeka? Guten Tag. Go ahead. Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. I'm not the one who's going to present it in German. That was the first question I got this morning. Are you going to say it in German or are you going to say it in English? I'm supposed to press something. Okay, I need to use the preacher's voice. It doesn't always fare well. All right, so good morning. My name is Tandeka Dabata. I work at DGRV, which is the German Cooperative and Raiffeisen Confederation. Thank you for the proper introduction. And just for clarity, so DGRV is the National Apex Organization and the top-level auditing federation of the German cooperative sector, according to the German Cooperative Act. Now, I'd like us to start here. Imagine a village where young people have no jobs. I know it's not difficult to imagine that because that's the current state that we have in most of our villages, where farmers struggle to sell their produce and where families feel left behind by the global economy. Now, imagine the same village 5 years later, running its own dairy business, exporting products, creating jobs, and building pride. What changed? Not charity, not government handout. What changed was the mindset, a common bond among the people. And here's the truth. The starting point is often the issue. Cooperatives don't begin with abundance. They begin with scarcity, with exclusion, and with frustration. But that starting point is exactly what makes them powerful because they turn their problems into opportunities. Across the world, enterprises face three simultaneous demands. One, be productive in cooperative markets, be inclusive, ensuring no one is left behind, be resilient, be able to withstand shock, whether economic, social, or environmental. Traditional corporations often excel at productivity, but fail at inclusion. NGOs excel in inclusion, but struggle with sustainability. Cooperatives, however, are uniquely positioned to balance all three. By definition, a cooperative is an autonomous association of persons united voluntarily to meet their common social, economic, cultural needs and aspirations through a jointly owned and democratically controlled enterprise. And remember, that starting point is often the issue. Where others see obstacles, cooperatives see the seed of enterprise. This is their genius. Now, let us share some information about where our organization started in Germany. There are cooperatives. Cooperatives are not just a niche idea. They are everywhere, literally everywhere. 20 million out of 80 million Germans are members of a cooperative. You work in a bank, you can work in a bank, it may be a cooperative bank, or let me put it this way. You can bank with a cooperative bank. You can eat bread from a bakery that purchases its flour through cooperative purchasing or cooperative store. You can live in an apartment owned by a housing cooperative. You can use electricity produced by an energy cooperative. In fact, every sector in Germany has a cooperative woven in its fabrics. They are not seen as alternatives. They are seen as mainstream. And that is why Germany's cooperative sector is one of the strongest in the world. It shows us that cooperatives are not just survival strategies for the poor. They are modern, competitive enterprises for everyone. So if cooperatives can power banks, bakeries, housing, and energy in Germany, why not here? Is it because we do not have people? Is it because we do not have the need? Is it because we do not have the frustrations that cause a common bond among the people? Now, I want us to look at the first anchor, which would be the business mindset and entrepreneurial spirit. Let me be clear, cooperatives are not charity projects. They are businesses. And like any business, they require entrepreneurial spirit, hard work, and sweat. When members and citizens see themselves as owners, inventors, and risk takers, cooperatives thrive. They compete, they innovate, they grow. Without this mindset, cooperatives risk becoming welfare instruments, dependent, fragile, and unstable. In Mozambique, we worked with a cooperative of young mechanics. At first, they saw themselves as beneficiaries of a project. But once they embraced entrepreneurship, marketing their services, reinvesting profits, and innovating, they became a competitive enterprise. Today, they are not just surviving, they are thriving. So what does that teach us? That productivity in cooperatives is not automatic. It is built on a business mindset. And it often begins at the hardest starting point, the lack of opportunity. The second anchor that I will talk about is the importance of a common bond. Yes, entrepreneurship alone is not enough. What makes cooperatives unique is the common bond, the glue that holds members together. This bond can be shared in a community, a shared profession, or even a shared dream. It creates trust, it creates solidarity, and it allows people to take risks together that they could never take alone. In Eswatini, a youth cooperative was found around a technical school. Their common bond was education. That bond gave them resilience. When markets shifted, when challenges came, they stayed together because they were more than individuals. They were a collective. And here again, the starting point was the issue. They began with limited resources, but their bond transformed scarcity into resilience. Respecting traditional structures. But let me add something crucial. What we found, or what is common in our country, or what we can highlight, is that cooperatives cannot succeed if they ignore traditional structures. In South Africa, elders, chiefs, and community leaders hold legitimacy. They are custodians of trust. If we bypass them, we risk alienating the very community that we want to uplift. That is why cooperatives must respect and involve traditional structures. They must build on cultural foundations, not replace them. As the saying goes, umtu ngumtu ngabantu, a person is a person through other people, loosely translated in English. Cooperatives embody this truth. They thrive when they honor the wisdom of traditions while embracing the involvement of entrepreneurship and finds its own future. Challenges and risks, definitely, like any other business or like any other form of business, there are challenges and there are risks, even within the cooperative space. Of course, challenges, they remain. Governance gaps can fragment cooperatives. Access to capital is often limited. A perception, too often cooperatives are seen as outdated or weak, or even worse, as a social experiment. But let me tell you, when they embrace entrepreneurship and solidarity, they are neither outdated nor weak. They are the future. We have conducted a number of trainings within the country that when you speak to cooperatives or when you speak to members of cooperatives, you find that there's an issue with the way they are governed, or there's an issue in the understanding or separating between a project and a cooperative business. And those risks are the ones that cause cooperatives to have challenges in succeeding and in their sustainability. Now, I would like us to look at the cooperative on a global and the local perspective. Why cooperatives matter in today's economy? Why do we think they matter in today's economy? Globally, cooperatives are future fit enterprises, not only social institutions. Remember, I even said by definition, they are an autonomous association of persons, not just any person, but people who are united voluntarily because of certain or common challenges, economic, social, cultural needs, even aspirations amongst them. So globally, they are future fit because they are not only social institutions. They respond directly to today's challenges. When you look at inequality, you think of the unemployment, even climate shocks and market volatility within our country and globally. Cooperatives exist in over 100 countries, provide livelihoods to over 200 plus million people around the world. They represent around 10% of the global employment. That's according to the statistics given by International Cooperative Alliance and the International Labour Organization. Now, globally, emerging cooperative models, we're giving a few examples of what's emerging in the globe on the cooperative models. The first one, platform cooperatives, your digital cooperatives. Platform cooperatives use digital platforms, your apps, your websites, your data systems that are owned and governed by its workers, producers, and users instead of investors. Why they matter? On productivity, the digital tools reduce transactional costs and improve market access. In inclusion, members control the algorithms, the data, and the pricing. On the resilience level, income and decision making are not extractive or externally controlled. Good examples or global examples on this, you talk of worker-owned riding hailing services and delivery platforms. You can even talk about your freelancer cooperative platforms, as well as farmer-owned digital marketplaces. The second one we're going to look at is your multi-stakeholder cooperatives, where cooperatives such as worker cooperatives and producer, consumer, and sometimes municipalities own and govern the cooperative. Why they matter? They align with the incentives across the value chain. For inclusion purposes, the multiple voices are formally recognized, and on the resilience level, risks and rewards are shared, improving the shock absorption. Some common examples globally will be your energy cooperative involving citizens as well as municipalities, food system cooperatives linking farmers, producers, as well as consumers, care and health cooperatives involving workers and service users. And then the last one, example on a global level, your producer and your value chain cooperatives. This is more of your next generation. The next generation looks at the traditional producers, cooperatives are evolving into value chain coordinators, not just bulk buyers or bulk sellers. The key shift here is moving from raw commodity sales into processing, branding, as well as logistics. From single cooperative focus into diversified income streams. From paper administration into digital traceability and data system. Why this works? On a productivity level, higher margins through value addition. On inclusion, we've got your small producers remain economically relevant. And on the resilience, income diversification reduces climate risks as well as price risks. The cooperative reality in South Africa and in the Southern Africa. The current position, in South Africa, cooperatives are highly concentrated in agriculture, savings, and services. They're often small and informal, frequently treated as welfare instruments, not as enterprises. This limits their productivity and survival rate. At a local level and local models, agriculture and in agriculture and as well as in agro-processing, cooperatives are still more scalable. I mean, they're still more scalable cooperatives form locally, but require evolution. How can that work, or what works is that it looks at input supplies, aggregation, and local market access, collective bargaining power. What must change in this space is move into more, is a move or a shift into processing, branding, as well as cold storage, marketing, digital market access, as well as logistics coordination. The second one that we have locally that is thriving, or what is more common in our space, is the savings and credit cooperatives. So when you talk of savings and credit cooperatives, you're talking basically of cooperative banking institutions. So stokvels and savings cooperatives already represent a mass financial inclusion informally. So the opportunity there is to formalize selectively, link savings, productive investment, support cooperative enterprises across the sector. And then the last one would be your platform-enabled cooperatives for youth and informal workers. There's a high potential within our communities for township logistics, local transport, home services, as well as small-scale manufacturing and crafts. What makes modern cooperatives competitive? Now, across global and the local context, successful cooperatives share these 5 traits. 1, economic clarity, member capacity, hybrid governance, digital integration, ecosystem support. Because in a cooperative, you are not working in isolation or in silos. You are not working as an individual cushioning all the risk, but you're working within a group of people locally, regionally, and even on international platforms. What therefore can we take home from this? Cooperatives are no longer just small survivalist or transitional enterprises. They are increasingly durable economic institutions capable of anchoring inclusive growth and absorbing systematic shocks. For South Africa and the region, the strategic opportunity is not to copy global cooperative models, but rather to hybridize them with informal economy realities, community governance traditions, and develop finance and public procurement systems. So in closing, so tomorrow when you think of enterprise models that balance productivity, inclusion, and resilience, don't think of startups or corporations. Think of cooperatives, old in origin, however modern in relevance, powered by entrepreneurship spirit, sustained by a common bond, and yes, often started from the hardest issues. Because cooperatives are not relics of the past, they are the enterprise model of the future. And together we can build economies that are not only productive, but inclusive and resilient for everyone. Thank you. Yes, okay. I think I would maybe take a question or comment here and there, but yes, I'll open the floor. All right. Thank you.
Oh, is it?
Yes.
Sorry. So South Africa doesn't have a lot of cooperatives for many reasons. And I wanted to ask you, beyond common bond, how do you create cooperatives beyond common bond? So him and I can be in education. Does that necessarily mean that our cooperative will flourish? Or do we need to be thinking about a lot more? I know a lot of them that have started, particularly where either making clothes, manufacturing stuff, they fail when the grant disappears. So they formed because there's a grant, the grant comes, when the grant ends, or when the money is finished, they end. And for me, it means it's not just the fact that we want to be entrepreneurs or the fact that we can both sow that makes us fit for purpose to be in a cooperative. What are the other ingredients that are required in order for these cooperatives to flourish?
Good morning. Maybe for me, it's more about adding on what Utandega, because I come from the South African Cooperative Banking Association, of which it plays so much of a vital role in the sector. There are a lot of cooperatives in South Africa. The problem is the legislation. The legislation is not there to support. Yes, government wants this movement of cooperatives, but in terms of the policies, the legislation, and even the policymakers, the ground is not leveled for them, especially in South Africa. When cooperatives were introduced, it was more on rural development, where our grannies will come together and set up a cooperative. But when you come to governance, reporting and all those sort of things, my granny did not go to school. They do not even know how to do an annual report, you know, all those sort of things. And then up until we talk in one voice, we'll be able to change. We've seen that in the space of the cooperatives banking space, where there's so much that has happened. And most of the people, they don't even know what is a cooperative bank. You know, my neighbor one day, when I said, you know, I'm a chairperson of this, what's that? An educated person. And there was a professor in some of the engagements that we did with CEDFA from UNISA, didn't even know what are cooperative banks. Like cooperative banks, you'll find that there are two legislations that are governing the cooperative banks. It's the Cooperatives Act and the Cooperatives Banks Act. Also, we are challenging the issue of the common bond, because sometimes the common bond is too wide, or it's too, people, they get excited. Okay, we live in one street, then our common bond, it will be people living in one street. Others, they do work. There is a cooperative bank down here in Madel Street, Umnoto. I'm just making an example of that. All the members there, they started with an NPO, where all members of the NPO, they started saving as an NPO. Today, they are building houses for one and another. They are buying land. They've got a big plan, you know, building schools, building a training academy, money sitting within them. What I like with the other gentlemen, we spoke about regions. It starts there. It starts in smaller communities, where we make sure that money revolves around us. We've seen what is happening in Africans communities, where they started from every day. You save a 2 rands, you save 100 rands, you save a 50 rand. It does not mean that you need to save more. But what kills cooperatives in South Africa is the legislation. And if we are not talking in one voice, we are not going to see anything. We are struggling also as cooperative banks because we are fighting with the big banks. But at least now, all the regulators, we were able to put them in one room, and they're starting to listen to us, where they are even supporting us in digitizing the sector, of which to us, that's a big win. That's why I'm saying that yes, we can talk SMMEs are individuals, but if you can come in that region, in that district, besides planting veggies, also think about financial inclusion. If I need money for harvesting, where do I get the money? Do I go to ABSA? Or even us as cooperative banks, we are working in solutions where we can align ourselves working with the commercial banks. Because commercial banks before, they saw us as threats. And we're saying to them, in other countries, we visited Netherlands, we went to Kenya or Swaziland, and it's working. Thank you. I'm very much passionate.
Thank you very much. She is in the sector. She's not talking about something that she's not familiar with. I think from the response that she gave, there's a lot that we can take home. What can make, or what other ingredient that can make cooperatives flourish? Need, unity, the things come up, aspirations. It's not only limited to, as you say, your common board, but the need to actually do something within our community. I'm taking some comments from the last points that you were sharing in the platform to say actually start working and doing something within your community, doing something that can also assist in helping cooperatives or making cooperatives flourish. There's over 193,000 cooperatives in the country registered. I'm not talking about functioning, I'm just saying registered. And that's alarming, because then when you start looking at the statistics of how many are actually thriving and functioning within the country, that's a totally different case of grants being thrown in. That's why our emphasis on what you're talking about, it's not a project, it's not a model to access grants. It's a business model that says what I can do, or what we can do as this small group of people can be able to assist not only us, but create employment even for the other community members where we are staying. So it's not a small thing, it's a very large, and it even has a history of, Germany has a long-standing history of close to 200 years of how they did it. How they did it started with 2 people. But where are they now? Over a quarter of the population is in cooperatives. Across every sector, there are cooperatives that are functioning. So it's something that's feasible. I see a hand there.
Just a quick question. What's the rand value of cooperatives in South Africa? I don't know. That's why I'm asking the question. And I'm curious what sits in the bank and what sits elsewhere. And what's elsewhere should stay elsewhere, so the banks don't get.
Oh, it's very difficult to chase that one. It's very, very difficult to chase that. I think we can take it out on the tea break just to give you a glimpse, but it's a very damning picture, if I may say. It's not a really beautiful picture, but it is, there is a footprint. The other issue would be your documentation of actually having clearly documented or clear statistics on the cooperative sector and what it looks like in the current state.
Just a quick follow-up.
So I hope they don't take that step of, going to a
Sitting in
source
the
that is likely
regulator.
to have reported on something that is true.
Especially with cooperative banks. I know
So that is, and then when we get to looking at social media accounts, so make sure the info comes from a trusted news source. Always check the account name or handle carefully and look at who else is sharing the claim. And this has changed a little bit in the last few years, because it used to be that you could only become verified on Facebook or on what was then Twitter by an internal process through that social media platform that actually went through a process to say, yes, this person is who they say they are, or that yes, they represent the organization they say they do. These days, you pay for that verification, so it is different. It's not as trustworthy as it was.
Thank you.
But it is
for that.
still a fair.
I think
it is
those
a
are interesting
fairly
numbers,
good
but damning, I
indication.
think,
It is
is the word
unlikely
we
that a
would use, because
scammer
yesterday
who's
we
just
also heard
spreading this
that if you
information
considered how
is
much
going
money
to
sits in
have
stock
a
sales, 60
verified
billion,
account. It's
but
not
it's not within
fail-safe,
the
but it
mainstream
is.
financial system.
would-
So there's a lot of money that could be tapped,
Still looking
but
at
isn't
that.
due to
This
governance
was
issues,
an
as you've raised.
example.
Okay, unfortunately, because we want to have a shorter
tweet
day
that
today,
was
we're going
sent,
to break
soon after the
for tea,
outbreak of
15
the
minutes.
war in Ukraine.
So shall we
by,
reconvene, please,
what
at
looked like the
no later than
Namibian,
quarter
which is
to
a
at
big
11:45?
newspaper.
Could we back in here for
I think
panel
one of the
3
main
and then our
Namibian
keynote
newspapers saying that the
address? Thank you.
president had
Thank
said
you,
that the
Tendeka.
Namibian Defence Force was ready to help Ukraine. And can anyone sort of spot what might have been the
15 minutes, I think, is
very-
okay.
Please
I'm going to be,
the
but please be
easiest
back.
clue that this
Thank
couldn't
you.
be trusted. Yeah, and what about the handle? The correct one is verified.
Nsako, please unmute.
That one is something else. Yeah, so first of all, the tip I mean, that's the easy giveaway. But then if you actually also look at the handle, it's an odd one. It's like the Namibian news.
Ntsako?
It's odd.
Ntsako?
It's unlikely to see
Ntsako?
the official handle of a
Please mute
newspaper, of a
yourself.
digital newspaper that's been in operation for a long time. And also things like
Ntsako?
punctuation.
Ntsako, please mute yourself.
Hi, Ntsako has been muted.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to use the podium because, or the lectern, because at this stage, we've also got quite a few of our delegates who've been watching online, and we want to say thank you very much. We're going to use this opportunity now for the next half an hour or so to really listen to a man who is regarded as a corporate doyen. He's an author, and I know many of you who are here have received his book as a gift and a token. And perhaps that's an opportunity to really gauge his mind when he has left the room. He's a respected corporate leader and board chair. He chairs one of the biggest listed companies in South Africa, Bidvest Group Limited, SBV Services, ArcelorMittal. So it spans a range of sectors from logistics to consumer goods, steel fabrication, or high value manufacturing. And so when we're talking about how do we create dynamic enterprises, how do we scale up from small to medium to regional, international, global, and how do we start integrating value chains? I think a lot of those issues that have been raised here, he can speak to them. So please welcome warmly Professor Bonang Mohale with his keynote. And it's on.
First, I must profusely apologize that you were waiting for me here yesterday, but my boss decided to send me to Siberia. So you can keep me here for the next 2 days to atone for my sins. It's quite an intriguing, interesting, but also a complex period we are in the midst of 4 wars that are raging on simultaneously, concurrently, and in parallel. And we normally don't think of the war in Sudan that is still going on, but also the war in Gaza. We think only of the war in Ukraine and now the war in Iran. These wars are not going to determine what is right, but what is left. The same way that the most basic test of a good police force is the ability to arrest more criminals than they employ. The same way that we, as a people with great natural endowments, understand this notion of democracy, that it is not so much about electing good leaders as it is about putting a system in place that would allow us to get rid of the bad ones peacefully. 32 years into democracy, all of us should be uncomfortable about the place that we are occupying. That in 32 years, maybe 3 things should become important to us, but we are still battling with the very basics. Number 1 is, how does time feel that much tighter? Because when you approach 40, you realize that it's further where you come from and probably closer where you are going, and your perspectives change. The second is that relationships should mean much more than bricks and mortar, much more than shiny pieces of metals, because we know that companies that are inappropriately located can move their headquarters. Those that are short on cash can leverage their position and go and borrow from the bank. But a company that is poor on people, it's a dead company. So instead of valuing bricks and mortar, our red BMW X5 with a white leather interior, is it possible that we could convert moments into long-lasting memories? Because in the final analysis, that's the only thing that genuinely matters. Lastly, that the big questions must become personal. We can't outsource them to anybody else, but me, myself, I. So what are the big questions that have become personal for me? I find it very difficult to explain to my niece and nephews that 32 years into democracy, all the waitrons, the tellers, and the petrol attendants are still black. The people on whose behalf we obtained this freedom with only the promise of two things. On the one hand, to improve the quality of lives of the majority of our people. On the other, so that there is a better life for all, not just elected officials. The big questions that have become personal for me is 32 years into democracy, poverty still has a black, a feminine, and a rural face. That all of us have not succeeded collectively in eliminating the legacy of apartheid. Because you see, the economic power patterns have been set for generations to come, unless you and I do something that is interventionist to halt this. Because you see, you can't speak of generational wealth when every generation starts from zero. The big questions that must become personal is that South Africa is not a poor country, just poorly managed. Because if you do the arithmetic, not mathematics, Edward Kitzvetter just banked 2.01 trillion rands. This is after cash refunds to companies and individuals. And this is the third consecutive year that he does this. In 2023, he collected 2 trillion rands after cash refunds to individuals and companies. He banked 1.687 trillion South African rands. Now, if you divide $1.4 trillion, not 2 trillion, just 1.4 trillion. Because in the last 10 years, on average, that's what he's been collecting by 65 million South Africans. There's absolutely no reason why anybody should go to bed hungry. Absolutely none whatsoever. The big question that must become personal for me is, how do I explain to myself that the Democratic Republic of Congo has 80% of the global cobalt? This is the stuff that they need to manufacture electric vehicles and the batteries that power them. And yet the DRC is the poorest country in the Southern Hemisphere, second only to Haiti in the Northern Hemisphere. On paper, the DRC is the richest country in the world. But people who benefit from greed, bribery, stealing, and cheating will keep this war raging on the same way that they did in Mozambique, because it raged for 30 years until they'd eaten enough. Then they came and said, oh, are you looking for Jonas Savimbi? Oh, here's the geolocation. Then and only then, Jonas Savimbi was found. But why are we allowing ourselves to be used that way? The continent of Africa is not a poor continent. No. Known only for internecine strife, wars, coup d'etats, famine, or floods. This is 1.5 billion people, 55 countries. I include Western Sahara, that speak 3,000 languages, with a continental GDP of $3 trillion US. And that measures only 60% of the economic activity. And yet accounts for only 3% of the global air traffic, attracts no more than 4% of foreign direct investment. And you see our leaders wearing suits and Stetson hats, cap in hand, and going to the Hague to go and ask for aid. And yet the illicit outflows out of the continent is 15%. So if we stopped the bleeding, we don't have to be going down on our knees for less than 4% of the global FDI. That, to me, is the big question that must become personal. That this continent now is known as the continent because of 8 billion of us in the world. 1.5 billion are found in this continent. And of the 1.4 billion people who have got absolutely no form of access to any energy whatsoever, 637 million of them are found in this continent. Hence, it's referred to as the dark continent. And yet, it has the highest sunshine in the world after Yoma in the US of A. 222 days of absolute sunshine. Yet the World Authority on Solar Energy is Germany with no more than 90 days of solar power. If I had time, I would tell you that it took us more than 17 years to attempt to stop load shedding. 17 years. After we built not one, but 3 generation units, 2 of them the biggest in the world. We are the 4th largest utility in the world. We built Midupi and Kusile. Each was meant to give us 9.6 gigawatts. 9.6 gigawatts. I exclude Ingula because it's hydroelectric power. Should have finished in 2016. It budgeted at 150 billion. We spent 300 billion and we didn't even have 50% capacity. And all we're trying to close was a 6 gigawatt gap. That's all it is, 6 gigawatt.